What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Gators Online Show. I am Keith Niebuhr. That is senior reporter Zach Albaverdi. We got a lot to talk about, as usual. Gators went to the White House to celebrate their national basketball championship. The Gators also picked up a huge transfer basketball commitment. We've got some DJ Lagway stuff to go over. We're going to talk some Gators baseball as well. But as usual, we got to go to our show sponsor first, Zach. So tell us a little bit about that and we'll get rolling.
Absolutely. Well, exciting show for you guys today and brought to you as it is each and every week by Big Game Football Factory, the producers of the ball that you will see the UF football team using this coming season. And you can get your hands on it if you head over to biggameusa.com. Use the code Gators online and you can get 10% off your entire order and free shipping for a limited time. The Gators designed this ball with Big Game USA to ensure they're comfortable with it, and it's truly one of a kind. Start your collection of Florida's official game balls today. Perfect for tailgates, autographs from your favorite Gators, or gifts. And the code works for any football. And this isn't just a football; it is a piece of Florida history. Be among the first to own it and snap yours today at biggameusa.com/Gators.
Back on the screen here. All right, so we've got like we said, we got a lot to talk about. The biggest news of the week to me and probably to you is that as Florida tries to retool that basketball roster, man, they got a good one this week. They got a big name guy, Boogie Fland, the Arkansas transfer point guard, committed to the Gators. What can you tell us about that? Give us a little insight into that, and then I'll throw in some statistics. So what do you got?
Yeah, this is a big deal for Florida. Everybody knows that since they signed Xavier Lee that they've been looking to sign one more like premier guard, obviously to reload in the backcourt. And, you know, they've had some options, but Boogie Fland, of everybody that they've pursued, potentially had contact with, they could not have landed a better prospect. I mean, honestly, this is a guy that, and I asked Todd Golden on Wednesday, but this is a guy that is probably playing in the NBA next season and turning pro this spring if he doesn't get injured during his freshman season. That's how good he was playing for Arkansas and how much that injury just kind of hurt his draft stock. So for him to fall in Florida's lap, given the way things played out and the fact that there's a huge need for him and he's going to be able to come in and just be a huge impact transfer for this team, for this backcourt, you couldn't have drawn it up any better for Todd Golden and his staff. To pair him with Xavier Lee, along with the addition of A.J. Brown, just an incredible reload once again this offseason.
Let's go over a little bit of his statistics and some other things people may want to know. He's 6'2", 175, 180 pounds. Coming out of high school, Zach, this is big. He was On3's number one point guard recruit in the country out of Archbishop Stepanek up in New York, class of 2024. As a true freshman at Arkansas, 13.5 points a game, 5.1 assists a game, 3.2 rebounds a game. He appeared in 21 games. He did get injured during the games during the season, but with 18 starts, shot only about 38% from the field, 34% from three. So he's got some improvement there. But what I like, Zach, is, again, assist to turnover ratio, 5.1 assists a game. Again, as a true freshman, already distributing. Only 1.4 turnovers a game. So that's really good. So, Jamie Shaw, who we work with at On3, one of our national basketball analysts, said the thing I like with Boogie Fland that really sticks out is that since he was young, he has moxie. Him being confident both in himself and raising the floor of the team. Solid size, nice length, won at a high level, performed at a high level via international play and high school AAU. He can play on the ball or off the ball. And that's what was needed, Zach. You needed that versatility because Xavier Lee from Princeton is the same kind of guy, point guard or off guard. So he can play, back to Jamie Shaw, quote, he can play off the ball or on the ball. He can lead the team as a primary initiator, putting pressure at the point of attack on both sides, and he can also shoot it. So they believe that this guy, forget about the statistics last year, he was kind of learning the ropes at the Division I major college level in the SEC. They think he can shoot it. The people that study college basketball watch this every day. Zach, Florida lost 4 really good backcourt players, 3 in particular, Walter Clayton, first team All-American, consensus first team All-American, and OP of the Final Four of the NCAA tournament. Excuse me. Will Richard was an outstanding player. Elijah Martin was an outstanding player. Those three guys were your starters. And then off the bench, Denzel Aberdeen did a lot of nice things. So you had a lot to replace. What do you think they've done at the guard position in the portal? How would you assess this? It's hard to replace these guys.
Yeah, it is. And, I think the good thing for Florida is, they kind of already knew what the answer was for one of those spots, the wing, where Will Richard played primarily with Thomas Houck. The plan is to start him at the 3. He will not play that spot exclusively. He's still going to play down low for Florida and be used as a 4, as a stretch 4. But his ability to shoot the 3-pointer and just his size, they feel like he can fit in there at that wing spot. So really, they kind of went into the offseason, even though they added A.J. Brown, who will play that wing spot as well. It was really the 2 guard spots that they needed to replace. And just thinking about all the guys that were out there in the portal, trying to find the right fit for their program in terms of team chemistry, how guys were going to gel, players being comfortable in their roles, and maybe having to share ball handling responsibilities, as we're going to see with Xavier Lee and Boogie Fland. Look, not everybody will come into that situation and be okay with it and work well with their teammates. So Florida had to find the right guys in that space. And so to get a guy in Xavier Lee, who's got the connection with Thomas Houck, has got all the metrics and the production that really jumps out the point guard position, to lock him up first and foremost, beat St. John's for him, beat Kansas for him, and then to have to, again, go through multiple options to land on Boogie Fland, to beat Kansas for him, and North Carolina and some of these other schools that we heard got in the mix, Texas Tech. He was the premier player left among the guys that had gone through the NBA draft process and then pulled out. There's not a better guard that Florida could have gone out and landed than Boogie Fland. And I think the biggest thing in talking to some sources and hearing what they liked about this addition is just that he is a guy that's a good teammate, and he has the way that he's going to fit into the culture at Florida, which is what helped the Gators win a national championship in 2025, is something that they believe he's going to thrive in. And he's the right person to pair with Xavier Lee, and then Florida's incredible returning front court, where they have some guys again that they're going to maybe focus on a little bit more next season, because you don't have that senior trio of guards that was kind of leading the charge. So obviously it's going to be a different look, but I'm excited about it. The one thing I put in my impact analysis story on Gators Online, Keith, that I think really jumps out, Fland ranked in the 97th percentile in pull-up jumper volume last season, and Xavier Lee ranked in the 98th percentile in pull-up jumper volume. So both these guys are threats to score. One thing that I think is interesting about having those two starting in the backcourt is now you've got 2 guys that are great ball handlers and can run the offense. You didn't really have that with Elijah Martin and Will Richard. That's not to say that they couldn't bring the ball up to the floor and run some things, but just not from a point guard standpoint. And I think of times that maybe Florida would try to get trapped, or teams would try to press Florida. There were times where the Gators found themselves in some sticky situations because Walter was really only their primary ball handler, and he was new to the position at that. So to go from that scenario to now having 2 guys in Fland and Lee that are very good with the ball in their hands, can create space, can dribble out of a jam, that's really exciting to think about what that's going to look like, and then how those guys can set up their teammates and those front court players because of how that ability that they have.
No, I agree with you. That's 2 guys that are going to be able to handle the ball in crunch time. They don't shoot free throws, from what I recall, as highly as the percentage as high as like a Walter Clayton, but it's not bad.
Sure.
And so they're going to turn it over less. They're going to be able to distribute probably more And this could very well be a situation, Zach, which you don't see very often. You might have two guys on the same team with over 4 or 5 assists a game. You know what I mean? These guys can shoot it, but they're primarily, I think these guys are distributors first that can also shoot pretty well. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think to get those two with also losing Denzel Aberdeen, he's probably the one guy. He was the other guard that could run the offense after Clayton and have some ball handling ability. So you really replaced both of those guys by getting these two.
Yeah, they can do a lot of different things. You watch the footage of them, the highlight videos. And I'm curious to see about how Xavier Lee, how quickly he transitions to major college basketball. Now, look, the Ivy Leagues do play non-conference teams. He's from Princeton. They play good teams. I mean, it's not like they're, they play good teams. I mean, Harvard's had good teams. Princeton's had good teams. Penn's had good teams. Then they play out of conference games against quality opponents. But week in and week out, night in and night out, I think there probably will be an adjustment period. You see Xavier Lee take the ball to the basket a lot, and he's got some acrobatic shots, and you think, okay, are those going to get swatted away in the SEC? So there will be an adjustment period. But it looks like it's a good, solid group. Plus of the guys you've got coming in the recruiting class as well, plus Isaiah Brown back, like you said, Tommy Howe playing the 3. Zach, before we get into a complete roster breakdown, we still are waiting on one guy. There was some big news this week. One Florida player is definitely coming back from the front court, but we don't know just yet. So give us the latest there.
Yeah, Alex Condon is at least officially not announced anything yet. In talking with Todd Golden on Wednesday, he's still going through his draft process. Sounds like he's still meeting with teams. He has obviously time still to, kind of figure out what he wants to do, where his draft stock is. And he's got a very specific outlook on what he wants from the NBA and what it's going to take for him to stay in the draft. Golden expects to hear a decision from Alex by May 27th, which is the day before the deadline. So that's kind of the timeline that we're looking for. But Todd said that he's cautiously optimistic. And what he meant by that is just based on the conversations that he's had with Alex and what he says it's going to take for him to stay in the draft, where he wants to get picked, what he wants his salary to look like. And just based on the projections and the teams that he's being invited to work out with, I guess the feeling is that he might not get in the range that he's shooting for. And because of that, will ultimately decide to come back and join Florida for another season. Now, don't get it twisted. Todd is also in his ear, and while he's respecting his process and certainly not pushing him, he's definitely selling him on what coming back to college can do for him, can do for his game, can do for his draft stock next year. A lot of the things that he's tried to work on during his draft process and show NBA teams in these workouts and really show them more of what he can do, because he didn't necessarily showcase it as much as a sophomore, which is, the 3-point shooting, some of the other aspects of his offensive game. That is something that if he comes back to Florida as a junior, he will be able to showcase next season. I think that Todd and Carlin Hartman and this staff will make an effort for him to be able to improve his draft stock and show the things that the NBA wants to see from him in order for him to be a guaranteed lottery pick. And those were the things that they did for Walter Clayton Jr., and I think that will be what they look to do for Alex Condon. But again, there's still a few more days left. My expectation is that he will be coming back to Florida. And if he does, that obviously makes the Gators a title contender because of this Boogie Fland addition.
You would be talking about one of the better front courts in school history. Ruben Chinleyu has announced that he's coming back.
Yep.
And, a guy that, you look at his stats don't jump off the page, right? His stats don't jump off the page, and he's got to work on his offense. But man, that guy came up big time and time again in the NCAA tournament, particularly on the defensive end. I mean, just man plays, big boy plays. You don't win the game without that type of presence, type of play.
No doubt.
So his game is probably going to, he made an exponential jump from the previous season at Washington State to this past season, if he makes that kind of leap again, think about the leap that Tommy Howe made from year 1 to year 2. Micah Handlogden came back and gave Florida invaluable minutes. It's not always pretty on the offensive end. Great defensive player, invaluable minutes.
Think about the jump he'll make, now that
he's healthy.
He's got a full off season to work his way back versus just being thrown right into the fire. Because he clearly wasn't in shape yet when he decided to return. He'll take a step next year too, and they'll need him to.
Gritty player. I mean, again, it's not, they're big guys. They're still growing into their bodies at this age. So it's not always this beautiful masterpiece on offense, but the hustling, the body control on the defensive end, the ability to get key offensive rebounds, all four of and I include Tommy Howe in that group too, because obviously he played 4 now, be transitioning to 3. But the great thing is, Zach, he can still play 4.
Yeah,
he can still play 4. You're
no
gonna have a huge lineup, but with him at 3, you don't necessarily worry about. I need you to talk about this, not me. I'm going on. You get so excited talking about the potential of this team. But it could be a loaded roster, Zach. So now you're the guy, and I won't shut up here. But what are some of the things that stand out about what this roster could be, particularly if Alex Condon comes back?
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about Florida's lineup and what it will look like in that scenario that you just said. And there's a lot to like about Florida's starting 5, and then the first guys that they'll have off the bench. I think it's pretty obvious at this point what those 5 are going to look like now that we know that the plan is to start Tommy at the 3. If we didn't know that, or if he wasn't planning to play there, that might complicate things. But for Florida, they're going to have him now, instead of being, a 6-man candidate of the year in the SEC, being one of those first guys out there on the floor when that ball is tipped. So you'll have him at the 3. Obviously, if Condon comes back with Chinyelu, you're returning your 2 starters at the power forward and center positions. And then you got Xavier Lee and Boogie Fland at the 2 guard spots. So those are going to be, who Florida starts the games with, and that's going to be the group that leads them as far as they're going to go. However, they also got some guys coming off the bench that are going to be able to not only make an impact, but at times, play a starter-like role. And probably nobody's going to feel that more than Micah Handlogden. I think that he's going to be used and played and contributing a lot more to Florida's front court and just the minutes and what he has to provide. Just given how things are kind of shaking up, Thomas Howe moving to a new position, Alex Condon making an effort to maybe be more of a stretch 4, take more 3-pointers, play out on the perimeter. I think they're going to need Micah Handlogden's presence inside. And I think that he will be Florida's 6-man, certainly that they rely on a lot, because I think the Gators are going to play big this year. And then it gets interesting because I think obviously you're going to use A.J. Brown, coming over from Ohio. Golden did reveal on Wednesday that he is coming off of a recent shoulder surgery, so it doesn't sound like he's 100% yet. You got Urban Klavzar as one of your options in the backcourt, and you would imagine that he's going to continue to be involved in the rotation. I really think that Isaiah Brown, Keith, is a guy that could be one of those underclassmen that really makes a jump for Florida this season. I think Alex Lloyd is going to play as a freshman. I'd like to see CJ Ingram get involved, and maybe he progresses and is so skilled that he finds his way on the floor. But because of the amount of options that Florida has at the 3 spot, because they can play both of the Brown brothers there, they may not need CJ Ingram necessarily. And I think maybe one of the reasons why is because of the jump that Isaiah Brown could make in year 2. Okay. I think that he's a guy that's ready to take on more of a role, ready to play more minutes, ready to contribute. I think both he and his brother are going to impact the Gators in their backcourt. And then we'll see from there if Victor, their other transfer that they brought in last year, who he redshirted this year. If he can contribute and give them some minutes in the front court, but that's kind of the guys that they're relying on. I do think that Alex Lloyd, if I had to pick a freshman that's going to play this year, I think he's a little bit more ready, probably year one, and maybe needed than CJ Ingram. But like I said, CJ might ball out to the point that you can't keep him on the bench in year one. We'll have to see.
Zach, man, you're going over this roster, and I'm just making notes here, and it's like, they had a lot of depth last year, and but man, this could be. Am I wrong in thinking? I'm not saying they're going to be more talented than the team that just won the national title. I mean, I got somewhat of a brain here, but could they have more depth?
Yeah, part of me wants to say that. Part of me wants to say yes. The only questions that I have are if Tommy ends up playing the three more, and he's more of a small forward and doesn't play as much in the paint. Is the trio of Alex Condon, Ruben Chinyelu, and Micah Handlogden, and rotating the three of them primarily in the front court with Thomas Houck mixed in? Is that enough? Obviously, it was enough this past year, but Tommy wasn't playing the three as much. So if he's playing the three more, does the law? I mean, I think it would have been great to have Sam Alexis, as to be able to be that other four behind Condon, because you've got a bona fide two guys at center and at the five spot in Handlogden and Chinyelu. But again, I think that you'll see Tommy play enough of the four. And obviously he's done in the past and been very successful at it. And Florida has other guys that can play the three and the two Brown brothers that it should work out. But I do think they probably would have liked to keep Sam Alexis if they could have. And I also think that they would have liked to keep Denzel Aberdeen. The other thing that as much as it's great to have Xavier Lee and Boogie Fland, it's still not obvious who that third ball handler would be. Now, it might not matter at all. But I couldn't tell you who that is right now. Like, their top two point guards and guys to run the offense are obviously Lee and Fland, but who's the third guy? Is it Alex Lloyd? Is it Urban Klavzar? Is it Isaiah Brown potentially? I don't think so. I think he's a 2 or 3. So I'm with you, Keith. I think it's probably Alex Lloyd. Now, again, those guys in Lee and Flan are going to have so much of the ball handling responsibilities that, again, it's not going to matter. But just to answer your question about is this team deeper and how does the depth compare? Those would be the only two things that I could point to. But who knows? The pairing to have Lee and Flan as your top two ball handlers, might that end up being more productive than Clayton and Aberdeen? Obviously, Clayton was off the charts, but Aberdeen wasn't. If you end up getting crazy production out of Flan and Lee, does that supersede that? Like, that'll be interesting to see. And again, Tommy playing more of the three, less of the four, does that hurt Florida's depth there? I don't think it will, because I think Micah Handlogden will be able to give them more. And I think Ruben Chinyelu will bring more on the offensive end. Certainly Alex Condon will if he comes back. So I think they'll be fine. But to answer your question, I'm not ready to say that yet. But I'll tell you what, it's going to be a deep roster. I don't know if it's deeper than last year's teams, but it's going to be deep, and they're going to have the options to where, you're already seeing national folks talk about Florida as a top 5 preseason team, a Final Four contender for next year because of these pieces that they've added.
And that's interesting. And obviously, how they're able to use the two guys that can play point is also going to depend on how other guys develop at the two. Position.
Yeah, correct.
You know what I mean? So you can have one guy sitting on the bench of the 2 point guards while the other's manning the point, so that they're each not having to play 39 minutes a game. Obviously.
Yeah, because if Lee is handling, if he's starting at the point and handling the higher percentage of the ball handling responsibilities, and therefore Flan is effectively acting as the 2, who's your backup 2? If you know what I mean, like we just said we think maybe, I mean, again, Lloyd is kind of a combo guard that could play the 1 or the 2, so maybe he fills both of those quote unquote backup roles. But is that Isaiah Brown? Is it Urban Clavzar? Again, does it not matter because Lee and Fland are going to be so good? But I mean, at some point, those guys are going to have to come off the bench and get some rest. So, what does your backcourt rotation look like when one of those guys comes off the floor? That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, guys get hurt too. I mean, Boogie Fland got hurt last year, thumb injury.
I mean, look, Walter Clayton got hurt.
Yeah.
Elijah Martin got hurt. Will Richard was dealing with a toe issue during the season. So you got to have depth. I'm excited to watch Alex Lloyd, though. I think based on our conversation, it's clear that they need him to make an impact, Keith.
I agree. And, obviously, more than I do. You're covering the team on a daily basis. But, Zach, I would say if there's one guy on the team that people ask the most about, it's maybe a guy that we haven't even talked about yet. He's really tall. Okay. That's right. Oliver. How do you pronounce his last name?
Well, it's Olivier. Is how you pronounce. Yeah, Olivier. I can never get his last name right.
I've interviewed him, and I still don't know how to pronounce his last name. Very nice kid, by the way. Unbelievable.
Yeah, but he's obviously 4'7" center, tallest player in college basketball history.
He ready to make any kind of move and play, or is that still maybe a year or two away?
Yeah, I still think he's probably a year away. He will play. You didn't get to see him this year because they are redshirting him, and as many know, it's not like college football where you can play a few games and still redshirt. In basketball, just like baseball, you go out there once, you're done. You burn your red shirt. So they kept him on the bench this past season. Obviously, it was good for him to develop and get his body to the point where they want it to be and where he needs it to be. But definitely, you'll see him get some action here in obviously some non-conference games. Do they find themselves in some situations in SEC play where maybe it's makes sense to sub him in or to run him for something? Potentially. But he's more of a long-term developmental player, and I think any impact that he can make will happen, I think in another year or two. But they definitely like him, and they don't want to lose him. And the way that the NCAA is changing because of the walk-ons and those being kind of eliminated, those spots kind of being eliminated, Florida will make sure that they keep him on the roster. I don't think that they're going to end up, or not that I don't think, I know actually that they're not going to end up signing the full 15 scholarships that they can sign with the new NCAA rules. And just like football, whatever spots they don't fill, they'll be able to make those basically walk-on players. Now, they can't have walk-ons in addition to the 15 spots that they've been allocated, but they can use the couple that they have left over if they don't use all the scholarships. So I say all that to say Olivier isn't going anywhere, and they definitely want to see him progress to the point that he can play for them eventually.
You're a big basketball guy. Have you ever thought about inviting him out to do some two-man work out on the local courts in Gainesville or what?
Man, it wouldn't take long for that guy to draw a crowd. It was cool to see him. Yeah, man. He obviously, what an experience for him to just decide to come to Florida, take on this preferred walk-on opportunity when he probably could have gone some other places and taken a scholarship, but maybe at a smaller school, and to have this season as a freshman where he gets to be a part of this national championship run, be in the spotlight. Man, we went to San Francisco, Keith, and like the first day we were out there talking about Florida being in the West Regional with a chance to go play for the Final Four, the first like 5 questions of Florida's presser were about Olivier and all these San Francisco media people that wanted to ask about this 7'9" guy that hadn't even played all year. Like, he hadn't even done anything to help Florida get to this point. Like, the first 3 or 4 questions to Golden were about him. Yeah. Kind of looking around the room like, but that's how polarizing he is. And the day that comes when he does get on the floor, and gets to play in front of the Rowdy Reptiles, and Florida fans get to have that moment. It's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, there's always been this fascination with people that are extremely tall. You know what I mean? I remember the Guinness Book of World Records books when I was a kid, and there was the guy that was 8'11" that set the record, and it was just, my dad would talk about it. It's interesting. So I'm pulling for this young guy. So people always ask about him, Zach, so I wanted to bring him up. He was in an interesting video yesterday. We're recording this on Thursday, yesterday being Wednesday. Olivier was at the White House with the rest of the team, and there's a great video of him taking a photo with the president. You met with Todd Golden today, Thursday, a day afterwards. What did he think? Did you talk to him about that at all? He must have. Look, regardless of where you sit on any political issues or who you vote for, the president's the president. What an honor, right? And what did Todd Golden? What did he think about it?
Yeah, he really enjoyed it. Florida obviously has been there before when they won their previous national championships, but it's been a while since we saw the Gators at the White House, and there was quite the crowd that showed up for the press conference. I saw some videos and pictures of how packed that room was, and for those players to be able to kind of get together one last time, presidential style, and to experience something like that, like you said, no matter what, like that is a legendary place in American history, and to be honored on that stage and recognized for what they did is kind of the final cherry on top for Golden and his players and his staff, and a lot of them that aren't together anymore. Obviously so many guys have moved on from the coaching side of things. They've had some guys that got some jobs, and obviously Walter Clayton and the other seniors moving on, and then they even had the two guys that transferred out, Denzel Aberdeen and Sam Alexis. They were there and made the trip. And as Todd said on Wednesday, like he got asked about those two guys coming and said, "Hey man, like they were part of our team. We don't win the national championship without their contributions, and our guys wanted them there, and we're not petty. We're not gonna not have them be a part of something like that." So Golden said that his favorite part was being invited to the Oval Office, kind of a spur of the moment during the press conference. President Trump asked them if they wanted to go, and Golden said that was not planned and part of their itinerary and the tour that they received at the Capitol. So that was cool for him that they got to go into the Oval Office. He said that they had about 30 to 35 people that were a part of their crew that went into the Oval Office, and said that every single person in there got a picture with the president, and something that they'll have for the rest of their life. So it was cool, man. I actually tried to figure out a way to get credentialed for it, and I never heard back from the White House press.
Well, it's funny you should mention that. The FBI called me a couple of days ago, Zach. No, I mean it's not easy to get.
Well, it's not. And then I saw the room for the press conference, and then they probably didn't have any more room to credential anybody. I mean it was packed in there. Did you see some of the videos? I mean, it was like there had to be easily over 150 people in there.
Yeah, there's some real. Again, we're not going to get into the politics, but there's a real Florida flavor in D.C. right now. The Attorney General is a university graduate. Met her. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State. Again, I forget about what side you follow. These are University of Florida people. They're pulling for the same teams that everybody watching is pulling for. So at least in that regard, everybody's pulling in the same direction. I love these ceremonies, Zach, and I always have, regardless of who won or who was the sitting president. I like that they do it. It's a special day for all involved and for their families. And I thought you brought up a great point. It might be 20, 30 years down the road, maybe never, where all these guys are in the same room again, all these players. Right?
Yeah.
You go your separate you go your separate ways. You know what I mean? Sometimes you don't see one college roommate for 10, 15, 20 years, let alone 25 people part of a team that did something extraordinary. And they may not appreciate the brevity of it until maybe 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And sadly, Zach, there'll be somebody that passes away down the road. There's always the first that has to leave us, right? And that's tragic. It's sad, even if they're older. And then you start remembering that, man, we haven't all been together since I think it's going to be one of those things that when Walter Clayton's 55 and he's hanging out with Will Richard back in Gainesville, and you're in the press box writing another brilliant story, as you always do, Zach. No, they're going to it's going to hit them then. Do you know what I mean? I think that's when it hits them. I think that's when it's going to hit them. You take a family vacation with your parents, you're all arguing with each other, and 20 years later when they're gone or you've moved on and you really appreciate these things more. So I'm so happy for these guys that they got to experience it. It's just amazing. It still seems surreal, Zach. It still seems surreal. It all happens in a flash, and they're national champs. I mean, it's just amazing, really. I'm going on.
And then from our perspective, like we've already turned the page and like been covering the transfer portal and covering guys leaving the program and new staff hires being made, and it's like, I think we all took time to stop and smell the roses that week, but it is crazy how quick we turn the page and focus on what's next and the season to come. And that was just a nice reminder of what that team did, what that season was. And it is, I think that run that they had and those comeback wins that they pulled off, however many months and years we get removed from that, I think the fans and media members and spectators that got to witness that, it's going to be something we never forget, because it was one of the best national championship runs and then one of the best national championship games.
And you just don't know if it's ever going to come again, Zach. You just don't know. My dad went to UF in the late 50s, and he died in 1992. He got to see exactly one SEC title combined in football and basketball, one recognized. He missed all this, and you just don't know when it's going to come again. Zach, I did want to ask you one final thing on the basketball team, and this was one that I'm really curious about. Maybe people listening aren't. You're around Todd Golden a lot. I know you know him really well. Good dude. You guys seem to get along great. I've seen you interacting with him. He likes you, I can tell. He's now a national championship coach. He's only 39. His birthday's, I think, July 7th. Has he changed at all? Has he changed? Is he still the Todd Golden from a year ago at this time?
He is. Yeah. I mean, he's especially, I can only speak from a media standpoint and just my interactions with him. But he easily, once you get to that level, can start, big leaguing us a little bit. And, he gets to a different stratosphere in terms of his contacts and the people that are now hitting his phone up and requesting his time and his interviews. And, he's multiple times since winning the national championship made time for the media. He, I even think to, the night of the national championship game, he has probably done 20 plus interviews at that point after winning it all. He still hasn't even gone in the locker room and like soaked it in and enjoyed it. And he still came out and did one last interview with all the reporters that were there for a good, 4 minutes. He's just a guy that's always made himself available. Will talk to us, will text with us. And then again, this week, as soon as he signs Boogie Fland and goes to the White House, he knows that we've got questions to ask and we've got stories that we want to write. And there's fans out there that want to know what's going on with his program. And credit to both him and Denver Parlor right. For making sure that we have these media availabilities and can, for lack of a better term, keep milking this cow, man. We got to strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah. There's a saying in the media, he gets it. He gets it. I think the coaches that don't get it, they don't feel like they owe anything to the media. Todd Golden doesn't necessarily think he owes anything to the media. He's smart and savvy enough to know that the media is the conduit to the millions of people in Gator Nation.
Yeah.
That's who you're talking to. You use the media to speak to the masses. And I think the coaches and the athletes that don't understand that are the ones that get kind of left in the dust. He gets it. Congratulations to Todd Golden and the Gators. Hell of a run. And we'll see what they can do next season. You ready to move on to football, Zach? Oh,
yes. Let me just do an ad read.
Not yet. Okay, let's go. Ad read time.
Absolutely. Let's give a shout out, as we do each and every week, to myperfectfranchise.net. and our good friend Andy, who's a big baseball fan, and from his line of work, he's seen firsthand the fantastic traits that baseball players bring to the franchise world. He's offering a donation of up to $500 to $1,000 to Florida's Baseball NIL Collective if anyone from our site purchases a franchise through myperfectfranchise.net. We think it's a cool opportunity to help the UF baseball program, and now's the perfect time to contact Andy to learn more. Remember, his services are 100% free, and he's here to help if you have any questions about business ownership with franchises. Head to myperfectfranchise.net to learn more, or you can text or call Andy anytime at 404-973-9901.
Just wanted to personally thank Andy for sponsoring the show. He's a great guy to talk to, fantastic human. So we wish him the best of luck at everything he does, and we appreciate all his efforts with us. Now, Zach, back in 1998, how old were you in 1998? I got to ask this.
I was 9.
Born, right? Okay,
I was 9.
Well, we'll just say I already worked at the Gainesville Sun. And there was a Gainesville High football team. I'm going to get to the point here at some point, I promise you. But I covered the Gainesville High football team for the Gainesville Sun. They had a really good team. Clinton Portis was the star running back. Everybody remembers him. Ian Scott was the star defensive lineman. And the quarterback was a guy named Derek Jackson, really good player. Backup quarterback and starting cornerback was a guy named Vernell Brown, whose son, Vernell Brown III, is now on the Florida football team as a young, hopefully, stud receiver. He is so far, and hopefully that continues. But Derek Jackson played quarterback at Troy and ultimately got into the sports representative game. He's an agent, right? He owns his own company. He's a CEO today, CEO and owner of Legacy Sports Advisors, lives in Charlotte. By the way, told me yesterday, Zach, he still hangs out with Larry Kennedy, the former Gator all-SEC cornerback, a lot. So Derek, even though he didn't play at Florida, is a Gator. He wasn't Florida quality as a player. He was just a little undersized, but a very good player. He represented Anthony Richardson, and now he's a representative of DJ Lagway. He's doing pretty good for himself, I would say. And we talked to him this week, and he gave us some updates on DJ Lagway that sound, to me, Zach, pretty promising. Quote from Derek Jackson of DJ Lagway: his full velocity is back. He has a pitch count, but there are no limitations on what types of throws he's making or how far he's throwing. Now, DJ Lagway took part in spring practice, Zach, but didn't throw out of just a precaution. Billy Napier, the head coach of the Gators, said that he had a lower body / shoulder injury without getting into the specifics. They were going to hold him out so he would stand behind the quarterbacks in practice and mimic their actions. Played in the spring game, was a captain in the spring game, but only handed off a week or two after the spring game. He was back throwing again, and the early returns are that he's doing really well. Zach, I'm going to get your comments here in a second, but he had been working in Jacksonville. He's back in Gainesville now. Had been working in Jacksonville with the trainer who was very well known for working with quarterbacks, Tom Gormley, and then the quarterbacks coach, Will Hewlett. Now, they're both seasoned specialists who trained a lot of NFL quarterbacks: Josh Allen, Brock Purdy, Matthew Stafford, Anthony Richardson. Again, the feedback has been very positive. I'll read some more stuff here from Derek Jackson. Quote, there's always improvement that can be made from a mechanical standpoint, but DJ's a special player. And he talked about the pitch count, Zach. He said that's been increasing each week, as you might imagine. And I asked him a little bit about last year, and he said, to be honest, quote, to be honest, DJ was never fully healthy. There were a bunch of things he fought through just to be able to perform at the level he did. Basically, he's saying, hey, you guys ain't seen nothing. To finish his quote, Derek continued, a lot of those things, those little things, had adverse effects while he was trying to throw without pain. It's fixed. He's healthy now. He's going to have his full arsenal. People have not seen his full arsenal, not even close.
So I get you excited.
Now we know why the whole staff, and from Brian O'Hara to Billy Napier to Jacob LaFrance off the field to Joe Hamilton off the field. Now we know why they're so excited, because the DJ Lagway I saw was pretty damn good. Okay. And we knew he was playing. He was a little banged up. He missed some time with the hamstring injury. But Zach, what about that story stood out? What about the quote stands out to you?
Well, first of all, that he's progressing, that he's doing more, that he's throwing more, that there haven't been any hiccups in his return to action and return to throwing that have caused him to scale it back. And I don't think that was necessarily a concern that he or his camp had. But it is, again, it's something worth noting that he's continuing to take steps in the right direction. For him to say his full velocity is back, that's exciting because obviously, that for one, that he lost some of it because of how much time he went without throwing the ball and how quickly it's taken him to get back to his full arm strength and his capabilities of throwing the football, which, judging by his comments, should be much better. And his ability to throw and what he's able to do could be even more impactful and productive now that he's not necessarily dealing with a nagging injury or injuries, which is what he was dealing with throughout his freshman season. Now, he's still got to get through fall training camp, and then he's got to go through the season, and you can get bumps and bruises along the way. But right now, it's probably the best that DJ has felt in a long time. And, you got to think that, especially if any of these injuries or issues that he's been dealing with, if they date all the way back to high school, then it's something that he's been having to push through. And you have to think that getting ready to enroll, obviously going through his senior season in high school, but then getting to campus as an early enrollee, going through spring practice, being thrust into action as a freshman, he never really there was never a point to kind of pump the brakes and maybe assess, one, how his injuries were and how he was feeling, but two, allow himself to rest and potentially recover and give himself maybe the time off that he needed or that his arm needed. He's really been on full go since 2024 when he enrolled early at the University of Florida. So the time away from the field was probably needed for him to get his arm and his shoulder strength and everything that he's got going on to the point that he's operating at maximum capacity. Because as Derek said in those comments, at no point last year was he doing that. When he went out there and set the freshman record in week 2 against Samford, we were reporting at Gators Online that he was limited in practice that week. Leading up to that game when he got his first career start, was not practicing and not throwing after that Miami game. So he's been dealing with these issues since then. We know obviously about the hamstring and how that held him back. So it is exciting to think about what a healthy, rested, and recovered DJ Lagway could do and could look like with his arm probably now in the best shape and strength that it's been in quite some time.
Well, arm and whole body, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the things I asked Derek, and I've talked to you about this before, DJ Lagway in 2024 was one of the best deep ball throwers.
Yeah. Despite all those issues.
I asked Derek, I go, Derek, explain this to me, man. You played quarterback. He could throw it deep, tighter spiral than anybody, but occasionally he threw wobblers on shorter passes. It didn't make any sense to me. I said, did the injury, explain that to me. Did he miss? I thought that was critical that DJ missed that time this spring because they weren't able to work on that. And Derek kind of laughed like, you idiot. I'm talking to me. And it was, he said that one of the things that was holding DJ back last year, again, and I mentioned it was kind of hidden in one of those quotes I read, was that the fact because he was injured, he was adjusting his body so when he threw, he wouldn't throw in pain. Well, when you do that, you're not throwing the way you normally throw it, right? Yeah. And now he's not in any pain. So, we'll see these guys, Tom Gormley and Will Hewlett, who DJ worked with over in the Jacksonville area. Gormley particularly is a trainer who works with guys that have battled injuries or coming off surgery. That's his area of expertise, I believe I read. So they know what they're doing. And but it is interesting. Again, I'm thinking, he's got to work on his mechanics. And Derek's basically saying, well, everybody's got to work on their mechanics. But I don't think what you're talking about, Keith, was related to mechanics as much it was related to the fact. And by the way, I'm not saying DJ Lagway stunk it up. He was incredible last year, but there were the occasional off-platform wobblers, right? And again, it was more of, listen, he was having some pain, and he would figure it out. What do? You cope, right? If you if the same kid's beating you up on one walk home from school every day, you take another route, right? So that's kind of what DJ Lagway was doing, is taking another route with his throwing motion. So it looks like he is good to go. OTAs will be starting soon. That's organized team activities, off-season stuff that they've been doing in the NFL for years. I ran into Waltez Clark Wednesday night. Duke, they just call him Duke, by the way, Duke Clark. I don't even know if anybody's ever going to see the name Waltez again. Florida true freshman running back. He was at Tampa Plant's spring scrimmage, and he was all excited about what was coming up. But we were joking, and I said, Duke, when I was at UF, the guys went home in May for the summer, and you didn't see him again until August, okay? And when Steve Spurrier was the coach, they used to have, I think it was the 10-minute run or the 12-minute run, and receivers had to run like 7 or 8 laps in 12 minutes. Offensive linemen only had to do 4 or 5. Guys would come back 30 pounds overweight, Zach. I mean, seriously, like going. I mean, it was a different game, and it is truly year-round now. And for anyone wondering about Duke Clark, I'll throw this in there. He weighs about 20 pounds more than he did a year ago when I saw him at spring game in 2024. He looks like a college running back now. All right, Zach, Gator baseball. You ready for some Gator baseball talk? We got another ad read.
Gator baseball. We got one more ad read though. Let's do the ad read. Let's knock it out. Where are we at? Okay, our buddies, Roback.com, always hooking up Keith with his swag, and you can get hooked up as well. The best way to describe Roback is best fit and best feel. For those who aren't familiar, Roback is completely changing the game with their incredibly comfortable activewear. They've released so many items with their newly licensed game day collection, and it's fantastic. Novel polo designs, clean hoodie, and Q-zip designs from some of your favorite schools, including the Florida Gators. Nobody else is on the market is pairing these level of custom designs with this quality of activewear. Roback has also been proudly leading the NIL charge, having signed partnerships with multiple college stars, past and present, and are becoming the go-to brand for college athletes across the country. Use the code Gators20 on Roback.com for a generous 20% off all new customers. That's RHOBACK.com, 20% off our performance polos, shorts, and more with the code Gators20.
All right, Zach, right now the SEC baseball tournament is going on in Hoover. Florida lost on, I'm trying to make sure I get my days right, Wednesday night, late.
Thursday morning, technically, is when it went final.
So Ole Miss, I believe, 3-1. Florida has finished the regular season 38-20. In the history of Florida baseball, that's about an average record, right? You've had some much better, you've had some worse. But from where they were, obviously, 2 months ago to where they are now, pretty doggone good. 38-20 overall, 15-15 in the conference after a 1-11 start. They won their final 6 regular season SEC series. Incredible. 27-10 at home. Now, maybe they're not going to play another home game. But 11-8 away. When you look at the top 20 teams, you have the baseball RPI, and it shows you what the top teams have done away from home. That is right near the top. That is among the better away records in the country. It's actually their home record that's just sort of okay. They're going to find out in a few days where they play. Zach, we're just going to talk in general terms because we don't really know what's next for the Florida baseball team. Most projections have them as a 2 seed. I don't know if you're hearing anything differently. Is that what you suspect they're going to end up a 2 seed, or do you think there's still an outside chance that they're going to host? Are you getting any insight on that at all, or not really?
I don't think so. After the loss to Ole Miss, I think that if they had they won that game, that would have improved their RPI, and that would have also been a team that they beat that won a series against them in the regular season. So not being able to get that done probably is going to keep them from being able to host. But to be a number 2, they should end up in a pretty good regional where they should have a chance to advance. And that's all you're playing for at this point, to be able to keep trying to march on to Omaha. So that's kind of my expectation.
Okay. Well, and if you're one of the higher number 2 seeds, I mean, this is pretty obvious logic here. I'm no genius, but if you're one of the higher 2 seeds on the board, then you're going to be in a region with one of the lower rated 1 seeds. So some of the projections have them going to Atlanta, where Georgia Tech would be the host. I've seen some it seems like Chapel Hill is the one we've seen more than the others, where North Carolina would be the host. I've also seen one for Conway, South Carolina, which is Coastal Carolina, a good program. I saw one a few weeks ago in Raleigh. I haven't seen any Raleighs lately. Right now, as we're talking, Florida's RPI is 16th in the country. So look, they're dangerous. If in fact they're going to be a 2 seed, Zach, correct me if I'm wrong. They look like a very dangerous 2 seed for a few reasons. One, Kevin O'Sullivan has won on this stage before. Two, they are hot. They're still hot. They went 1-1 in the SEC tournament. Okay, whatever. But they're still a fairly hot team right now. And three, there are not many teams that have a 1, 2, and 3 starting pitchers like Florida does right now. And also, they've been hitting well all season. The pitching wasn't there when guys were injured. Are they, in fact, a dangerous team, or have they peaked, or do you think this is a team that's still got some left in them here, some runway?
Well, I'll mention that, or I'll start that by kind of revisiting what happened their last regular season series, which was kind of just a microcosm of their season and their turnaround and why it's been so impressive. And that was what happened in the series opener against Alabama. You know, they lose Luke Heyman to a season-ending broken forearm injury, which we first reported at Gators Online, and that's a massive blow to this team. Heyman has been so key to their turnaround, has made huge plays, one of the best catchers in the country, and so to lose him at this point in the season is a blow. And then they also had Justin Nato leave that game with an injury as well. He had one of his fingernails came off of his finger. So he ended up having to get it super glued back on, and he returned to the lineup in Hoover. But, you know, for Florida to go through those 2 injuries on Friday night, that really put them in a bind, forced Kevin O'Sullivan to make a bunch of moves in the lineup, and they ended up winning that game, taking the series opener. They lost, obviously, Saturday, but then they took the series Sunday. Or, excuse me, lost Friday, took the series Saturday.
Yeah.
But after they won Thursday, Keith, that gave Kevin O'Sullivan 500 wins at home.
Wow.
And in his post-game press conference, and I don't think he knew that he was at 500. Maybe he did, but he said that he had a lot of wins in that ballpark and a lot of wins at Florida at home. But he said that the series opening win over Alabama, where they lost Luke Heyman, lost Justin Nato, had to shuffle their lineup, had to rally and come from behind to win, was one of his favorite wins at home ever. And one of the reasons why was because, like I said, it represented and was another example of just what this team has been through this year. Yeah. Injury after injury, guys having to play out of position, coaching staff having to make adjustments, players getting put in uncomfortable situations, and they reel off 6 straight series wins in SEC play despite all of that. So he said that because of all that, it will go down as one of his favorite home wins as Florida's head coach, and it was number 500. Now, I say all that to say, as great as that is, you lost Luke Heyman.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal, and I think it does make Florida less dangerous. If you can get Colby Shelton back in the lineup for NCAA for the NCAA regionals, I think that will be a big boost for them. But having Heyman, not having his power on offense and in the lineup is a bummer. But then just how well he was playing behind the plate. I know they got Brody Donay, and he's played there, and he made a great throw out to second in that game against Ole Miss. But I mean, you want Luke Heyman behind the plate. That's the guy that's been leading that charge all year. So his injury, coupled with a couple others, I still think Florida is a dangerous team, and I still think they have a chance to make it to Omaha. But I'm kidding myself if I wouldn't say that losing Luke Heyman definitely changes the complexion of how deep of a threat they can be in the postseason.
The teams that often make the biggest run in NHL hockey in the playoffs, they got a hot goaltender. I keep that the term is standing on his head. In other words, he can't do anything wrong right now. And maybe if Florida's ace pitchers, and you throw in Clemente out of the bullpen as well. Maybe if those guys could put their best couple weeks forward, anything's possible. Zach, I mentioned earlier that Florida's away record is 11-8, and I wanted to point this out. Auburn, which is the number one team in the RPI, is only 7-11 on the road. Now, they don't play the identical schedules, but you would assume Florida's played at least as tough a schedule as Auburn, and quite frankly, it might be tougher when you include in the fact that Florida's got to play Miami and FSU every year. So, again, Florida 11-8 on the road. Auburn, number one RPI in the country, 7-11. Vanderbilt's number 2 in RPI. They're only 10-9 away from home. Georgia, number 3 in the RPI, 10-10 on the road. For the top 3 RPI teams, Florida's better on the road than. Now, you say, where could Florida potentially go? We mentioned some of the teams. We don't know exactly where they're going to get sent, but let's say Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, if Florida is sent to Atlanta, currently 39-16, they are 26-9 at home. And Florida is, again, 11-8 on the road. So you start looking at those things. And North Carolina, by the way, number 7 in the RPI, they are 25-6 at home. So there's a reason why these teams would be potentially number 1 seeds. But you would think that having played in the rigors of the SEC all season, never been better. And, in fact, going to Texas. Now, I think Texas might have been missing a player or two in that series, Zach. Well, guess what? Florida's been missing guys all season. So it all cancels out when you really think about it. But if you can go to Texas and win 2 of 3, and quite frankly, if there's not a rain delay,
they might have swept them.
Maybe they sweep Texas. Maybe. I mean, if ifs and buts, I get all that. But, at the very least, they took 2 or 3, potentially could have taken all 3. That's the kind of team that you think could go to a Chapel Hill or could go to an Atlanta.
100%.
If they get by that first game, to me, that's always the key to everything. But it looks like they could be a dangerous team. Which pitcher would you throw in it? You got to win that first one, man. You do not want to get against the 8 ball. Who's your number 1 guy, Zach? Who do they go with in the first game of the regional? What would you say?
You got to stick with Liam Peterson. I know Aiden King has had the hot hand, so to speak. But you got to go with Peterson. I mean, he's been your ace all season. He's had some fantastic performances. He wasn't the reason that they lost against Ole Miss. They just couldn't get the bats going, just 4 hits. So I think you got to stick with him. I have to look at the schedule of when their first game would potentially be. I guess maybe if for whatever reason he hasn't had enough rest. But if you're not throwing him out there, you're throwing Aiden King. I think Aiden King is the only other guy that you give consideration to, just because he's been pitching so well lately.
And then you obviously throw your next ace in the next game, because if
Correct.
you can go 2-0, you're now, granted, that doesn't always work out that way, but if you can go 2-0, the team you beat in the second game has to play a survival game or all that stuff. So, all right, excited to hear about that. And that is it, Zach. I think we've covered a lot today. We've said a lot, as Howard Stern.
Yeah, man. It's crazy to see how this basketball roster reconstruction has come together. We're still waiting on Condon. I feel good. I think Florida does too, about him coming back. Keith, I can't remember the last time I was looking forward to a football season and a basketball season this month.
Well, baseball too. I mean, and then a big one for me starting early next or later this week. Excuse me.
Golf.
The NCAA men's golf tournament out in Carlsbad.
That's right, baby.
And again, I have told God, I hope I didn't dig myself a hole here financially, but I've told JC Deacon if they get to the finals, I'm flying out there, which means I'd have to book the ticket at like 9-10 p.m. the day before. That's what Sky Miles are for, Zach, because that ticket's going to be pricey. But yeah, it's an exciting time. Got men's track and field coming up, obviously, men's and women's track and field, at the national level, and softball. Right? I mean, there's still lacrosse playing in the Final Four against North Carolina. Talk about a monumental hill that they've got to climb there. But a lot of good things going on at the University of Florida right now. So that will do it for this edition of the Gators Online Show. I am Keith Niebuhr. That is Zach Albaverde. We will do it again next week. Take care, everybody.